work, and play. This KC Cares episode is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kauffman Foundation, www.kauffman.org. Well, today we have an incredible guest. Nothing expresses a nonprofit's purpose better than the device of storytelling. With today's technology, there are so many options on sharing your story, but what's right for you and your organization? How do you know which one to choose? How do you even craft your storytelling? Well, for our monthly Ask the Expert series, we're chatting with KC Care's own producer, Bobby Keys, who is a master storyteller, videographer, and website master with great experience under his belt. Bobby, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Ruth.
This is so fun to get to talk to a master who is often behind the scenes.
That's a lot of pressure.
Not a lot of pressure, but a lot of good information we thought to share with our nonprofits, and even profit organizations can benefit. So we hear the term storytelling thrown around a lot. Can you kind of flesh that out? What do we mean when we talk about that?
Yeah, so storytelling can, for nonprofits and for profits is basically just communicating who you are, your brand, the people behind it, telling the story of how you impact the community, or if you're a small business, you tell the story of how you impact your customer. And that's through various ways, video, case studies, newsletters, blogs, social media, but it's always, something that has ideally a compelling character, a clear message, relatable characters, and then, a call to action.
So you're sitting down, you're the marketing director, or maybe the development director, or even the executive director. Mm-hmm. How do you start? How do you start to craft a story that eventually will be very compelling?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the way I do it is you always have to think of, one, the end goal, and two, whoever you're trying to reach, your target audience, your buyer persona, as I call them. But you think about who they are and how they're going to be inspired, how you're going to engage them. A lot of people just kind of throw, this is who we are, this is what we do, out into and think that's a story. They try and feed that to people, and a lot of times that falls flat. You usually have to come up with a compelling character or a reason that you're there. Typically, like I would say, if you're a nonprofit, think of an impact story that you've experienced in your time at the nonprofit. Somebody you've helped, somebody a family that you have affected. Think about that, and then use them as the main character. Then you come up with kind of like your story framework. I always like to tell a story in an order. In my framework, it's easy for me to start out with what was life like for this family, for this child, for these people. What was it like before you were involved? What are the hardships? What are the pain points that they experienced? What it would look like in a perfect world if they had the solution you're providing as a nonprofit or a small business. Talk about the change that you've seen it from the beginning of your time with that family. Like over time, I've seen this child, since they came here, they've come to our nonprofit. We've seen a change. I remember the day that they changed. That's all the sparkle in their eye when this happened. Think about those the moment that you affected their life and how that changed. You can throw in some data points as well to help reinforce who you are and what you do, and then tell about what's coming up in the future. I mean, you can get into, there's different types of story frameworks, but that's always the for me when I'm shooting video, that's always the easiest one to go to. what's life like before you? What are some of the other problems, and agitate those problems? What are the problems they face? What are the solutions you provide? What's the data? Is there any data to reinforce what you do? And then what does that future look like? And then, if you're speaking to a donor, you always want to use them as the hero of the story. You, as the donor, can help, such and such get to a better place, buy X amount of bicycles, feed X amount of children, So that's I guess a loose way of doing it.
That's a whole lot of stuff. So I want to go back. You were talking about compelling emotional story before and after, and then you have data points. How do you know what is that balance? As our expert, how would you advise someone? I know we probably have both sat through videos at a number of events where it's like, can you get to the next frame? I've seen so much data, I'm swimming. Or you have me crying. Tell me, how I've moved the needle. So how do you do that?
Yeah, it all depends on who your target audience is. If you're appealing to the general donor, you want less data. You want more story, less data, because you're right. It does get monotonous, and you can just vomit data points to where it's like, okay, you lost the story. If you're appealing to more of a corporation, they're going to want to see more data about it, the impact of you have on the community. So that's with something like that, with case studies, which is another way to tell a story outside of video. You could use data, grants, you use data. So it always depends on who you're trying to reach. Honestly, that's really going to mold your story, and that's where you'll find that balance. And if you are watching the video back, or you're looking at it and you do feel, go with your gut. If it's like, if you're creating the story and you're creating the case studies or the blog articles or the newsletter, and you just like, that's a lot of data, I lost it. Pull it out. Hit the crucial parts. Hit the crucial parts that reinforce what your mission and your cause is.
Well, a lot of our nonprofit friends can't necessarily afford to have a high quality produced video.
Yeah.
For the donor, a stakeholder, the staff. So is there a way to kind of balance that? And my follow-up question would be, is what's the right length? That's always something I hear debated. How much is too much in a video? And
So, okay. So here, I'll give you 7 ways that nonprofits can tell their story. And one of them is video and documentaries. That to me is the most effective way. There's just too many statistics around video that shows how engaging it is, for the end user. Yeah. So, but yeah, documentaries and videos are a great way that a nonprofit can tell their stories. Case studies, kind of in-depth stories of individuals and communities that have been impacted by your nonprofit work. They can be video but written. Usually those will be in a PDF form or a website. You can go, just small little case study of how we impacted this family or this community. Testimonials. Testimonials are another way for you to tell your story. That's a great way for somebody else to tell your story and how it impacted your life, and how your nonprofit impacted their life. That's at the top. If you can get testimonials from families and even donors, from other donors, that is huge. And that can live on your website, that can be in videos, that can be in social media, that can be in a newsletter as well, which social media is another way to tell your story. They can be small little bites that you use throughout or that you gather throughout the day. It could be of the people, the volunteers, the staff members, the people who are the beneficiaries of your nonprofits. Just little bite-sized, I call them bite-sized videos, bite-sized, content that's consumable, easily consumable, and easily communicate your message in a hurry. You can do blogs. That's a great way to tell your story. Newsletters. That's another great way to tell your story. It keeps people engaged, and you should be communicating regularly and updating your content on your website with blogs, and you should be reaching out to your donors regularly with newsletters. So fit those stories in there. And they don't have to be long. They could just be little bits of bite-sized information that ultimately drive people to your website. If you're using a newsletter or even social media, because that's the goal of a lot of this content, is to drive people to your website. You can do infographics. Those are relatively easy to make these days. Canva, that's a great, it's a great platform to be able to produce and design content. And they have templates that you can use for infographics. Events are another way to tell your story. Open houses, tours, volunteer fairs. It gives people a chance to see your nonprofit firsthand.
You gave us some great information and a list of where people can even just start to look at that. I want to take us a step back. Sure. And that's when you're crafting the story. Who should be at the table to do that?
Your director, your nonprofit director should be there. Your marketing director should be there. Your program director should be. I think it should be everybody, because everybody's going to be affected differently by the different people that you engage, right? By the various people that you engage with in your nonprofit. So everybody's going to have a story. Everybody's impacted different ways. So I think those, even volunteers, grab a volunteer, a key program director, or somebody who's in charge of a program manager, your executive director, board members, and then sometimes, if you are, I've worked at nonprofits in the past that deal with children. You involve their family and see if get their family on board to give it the okay to tell the story of the child and how they were affected, how it affected their family, the changes that they've seen, and what that future looks like. That's you kind of got to get all parties involved. But those are just some of the people right there.
All right, I'm going to be the devil's advocate, since I work in the communication end, and I'm the person who's, at the table trying to say, okay, we've got this together, and now I have all this here. Should I start with an outline? Should I have something kind of crafted where these things kind of feed in? Mm-hmm. Or should I just have those conversations first and then kind of draw, create that outline of this story?
So I think it's always going to be a mix. It's the creative world, right? And it's always fluid. There's always going to be changes. But if you have some type of process of, what's the goal? I always start with the goal and reverse engineer everything. Who are we trying to reach? What is, and how do we reach them? What's the best way to reach our target audience? Is it via social media? Is it via infographics? Is it, blog, newsletter, white paper? How do they consume, and how are they going to receive the message that you're trying to send? And then from there, we start with the stories. Then we start developing those stories. But yeah, always come with an outline, basically with the goals at the top. What is the goal of this video or this newsletter or this, whatever we're doing? What is the goal, and how is it going to impact and inspire the people we're trying to reach?
We're talking with Bobby Keys. He is our Ask the Expert, and we're talking about storytelling and the way nonprofits can create their story and where they can share it and how to share it. I kind of jumped over a question I asked you earlier. All right, how long is too long, or how short is too short if we're talking in a video or digital medium?
Yeah, so some of it's going to depend on where it is. Most of the time, if it's living online, and you're sending it via email, you've got it on your website, you want to stick to, anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes, right? You don't want to typically go over 3 minutes because people will tune out. There's a higher rate of tuning out after 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to events, sometimes you have, a lot of nonprofits have these big events, fundraising events, everybody's dressed up. And then there's a video that is the centerpiece of the ask. And those have gone, I've shot them up to 7 minutes, some maybe even a little bit more, but people start to tune out, right? You want to keep, I would say you want to keep that within 5 to 7 minutes. If it's going to go longer, you better make it compelling. You better craft that story and make sure, it's not full of data. It's got a good mix of story, data, visuals, music. But you don't want to go past that. I've seen the glaze over people's eyes when it gets too long. It's just like, okay, because, you want to take them on an emotional roller coaster, but you don't want to wear them out. You want to keep that energy flowing. So right when the video's done, boom, then you go into the ask. But
I've been at those events where you start pushing the dessert or you ask for the next cup of coffee, and it's like,
exactly.
Or the anticipation of, okay, now they're going to do the ask.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some people are apprehensive of that ask.
Sure.
Is there anything to do in our storytelling to make that more comfortable for that part of an audience?
I think, honestly, I think that people are expecting it, right? Asking for money, whether it's, you're a nonprofit or you're even a small business, that when it comes to time to negotiate the dollars or to ask for the money, that's always an uncomfortable feeling. But to me, the best results are when you just do it. We need your help. We need to raise this X amount of money to keep moving forward, but I don't think you really have to phrase it like that. I think, when you put it on like, the hinge of we're not going to make it unless you donate, to me, that's a turnoff, right? So if you can say, we need, in order to help X amount of people this upcoming year, we need this, right? You're giving people a goal. You're being very specific about what you need. And it's not hinging on you making it. Our nonprofit is going to move forward, but here's our goal for this year. Last year, we helped 20,000 people. This year, we want to help 30,000 people. And here's how we're going to do it with your help. So it's all how you frame it. And it's not what you say, it's how you say it. I think that always goes back to, storytelling.
In other words, probably a tactic is it's your fault if we fail.
Yeah.
It should be, we can do so much more.
Yeah.
Please join us.
Yeah.
In going on.
Yeah.
So you craft these videos.
Mm-hmm.
I know you do that because I've seen some of them. They're wonderful. At what point in a process do you show it to your customer, which is the nonprofit? And let's say it just is like, oh my God, it's not what we want. Is there a way, I guess maybe my question is there a way to avoid that along the way so that the video storyteller is not going, oh my God, we're past budget and now they want me to do this? Absolutely.
That is something that every video producer starting out runs into. And I've learned over the years that you have to have a plan and you have to set expectations. All of that is done in the pre-planning, right? If you start out and have these meetings and you say, what is our goal? Who are we talking to? Here's our plan. Here's what it's going to look like. You provide style frames. You provide the basic framework of the story and what that goal is and how you're going to get there. If you're meticulous about the pre-planning, it really does keep you from scope drift, right? which is a killer. That's gonna kill your budget. That's gonna kill the timeline. It's gonna kill the story. Because then it creates a panic, right? If you just kind of willy nilly and like, I'm gonna shoot this, I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna give them this content. If you keep the nonprofit directors and the key principals involved the whole time, it will help eliminate that going back and saying, we don't like this, you need to start over. There's so many people that just willy-nilly it and start throwing stuff against the wall, and just, I guess it's like the wild west, and they hand them a video and people are like, well, what's this? This isn't what we talked about. Everybody's got a different vision of what the end goal, what the end product is going to look like. It never fails, ever fails. It is always, oh, okay, well, I didn't think of it like that, I like it. Or no, that's not what I had in mind, I don't like it. But the key is to pre-plan, plan some more, and then keep the client involved. You don't want to get in a situation to where you're basically sending a video out to a client and you didn't get the key stakeholders involved early enough, and then ultimately, they end up sending it to their higher ups, and they haven't been communicating this process the whole time. Then the higher ups, maybe it's a team of 10 people. Now all of a sudden they have opinions about what the video should look like, and they come back with all these changes, and that's something you want to avoid. That's part of the pre-planning. Got to get the key stakeholders involved early in the process. Show them the framework. I always start out with, I call it the backbone of the story, right? You're always going in, you're shooting the story of typically with us, it's interviews, it's talking heads of the key stakeholders, the directors, and the people, the beneficiaries of the nonprofit, right? So you get those stories, you let them tell the story. You lay that out in a cohesive timeline. You send it to the nonprofit or the client. You send it to the client. Let them look at it. Let them understand that this is the backbone of the story. Now we're going to start adding B-roll. Now we're going to start adding a few graphics if we need to. So pre-planning and keeping them involved, is huge in keeping it from scope drifting. Hope that answers the question.
That did. Now you've lost your hair over this. I know there have been nightmares when, where you run into that. So what I extrapolate from what you're sharing is that, nonprofit, try to have your act together before you meet with your digital storyteller, your videographer, whoever is helping you produce it, so that it's really clear who is, who's the buck stops here person on the team that can say, okay, this is what we're doing, and we're going to move it. We're going to move it forward. I want to know, what are the biggest mistakes that nonprofits make as they go into storytelling like this?
Ooh, that's a good one. The biggest mistakes, not planning. That's probably the biggest one. That's where things just go awry. And they don't have to plan everything out. A lot of times people that aren't in the creative world, they don't know what they don't know. So it's not like they can come to the table and just say, oh, we've got this whole plan, this should happen, this should happen, this should happen. Usually that, that's good, but that ultimately gets thrown out because they don't understand the video, the video process, right? So, not planning, not getting the key people involved, not understanding what their goal is a big problem. They have to understand what their goal, what they ultimately want to do, where that video wants to live. If they're shooting video, there's other ways to tell the story, but if they're shooting video, they want to know, they should know where they want to push this, where they want to put the video. And it's my job too, to help them understand that as an quote unquote expert. I help guide them and walk them down that path. and say, here's where you should, based on your goal, here's where your video should live. Here's where we should concentrate our efforts. Here's if we're talking to these people, here's the type of content we should be providing. Overthinking it is another problem that nonprofits have. It's not always, it doesn't always have to be this big grandiose production. This could be something that's shot on your phone. It could be just little stories about what are you doing today? What is such and such doing today in the office, and how is that helping, our target, our people. It doesn't have to be a huge, 5-camera shoot with, lights and an HD truck. I mean, it doesn't have to be that big. It could be something simple. And not utilizing it after you get it is a huge mistake. A lot of times, and this is how I got into website development. That's mainly what I do, is shoot video and build websites. A lot of time after I'd shoot a video, this was a while back, where video was more cumbersome, you would shoot a video and nonprofits would spend money, spend time, days shooting this. I mean, weeks of production, and you give them the video and they use it once and then it's done. And I'm like, well, that should be living on your website. You want to drive traffic to your website all the time. And that video can be a centerpiece of your website. So, getting nonprofits to understand, and a lot of time, and then back to sort of websites, they wouldn't know how to do that. So I would say, oh, well, give me the video. I know how to build websites, and I'd throw it up there. But that's, and these days it's relatively simple. You can throw it up on YouTube. Utilizing the content that you create and making it evergreen. So yeah, those are some of the problems that they've.
But you've offered solutions, which is great. And we'll, of course, have some of these great tips on our own social media so you can follow up. And we would be remiss if we didn't let people know where they could learn about all your expertise besides our kccaresonline.org. It's Bobby Keys Media. And the website is bobbykeysmedia.com. You can go there and check out some videos, websites. I've got blog articles, about nonprofits and how they can tell their story, different ways nonprofits can tell their story, why it's crucial. And then, other tidbits of information that you might find useful. And feel free to reach out to us as well if you've got a question. We would certainly get the expert back in touch with you so that you will know all things. Bobby, I'm so glad we got to sit down and have you be the expert.
Well, I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for joining us on KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. We're produced by a nonprofit called Charitable Communications. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. To be a guest on KC Cares or Underwriting Opportunities, please visit our website. That's kccaresonline.org. And spread the love. You'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and on Instagram at KC Cares Online. Don't forget, you can catch us Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 AM and 94.5 FM. Thanks for joining.